At a press event on Friday, President Joe Biden spoke about the Republican plan if they retake Congress after the midterm elections. The president took a swipe at former President Donald Trump, saying, quote, "The federal deficit went up every single year in the Trump administration." The president also slammed Republicans for passing the Trump tax cuts. President Biden contrasted the GOP actions with what his administration has done. Biden said that the deficit has, quote, "come down both years that I've been in office."
Republicans in Congress have a very different vision. Now listen to me closely. Congressional Republicans love to call Democrats big spenders, and they always claim to be for less federal spending. But let's look at the facts. The federal deficit went up every single year in the Trump administration, every single year he was president. It went up before the pandemic. It went up during the pandemic. It went up every single year on his watch, the Republican watch. In fact, in 3 years before COVID hit, the deficit ballooned by another $400 billion. They're the facts. And one big reason for that is Republicans voted for a $2 trillion tax cut, a Trump tax cut, which overwhelmingly benefit the wealthy and the biggest corporations. And that racked up the deficit significantly. On my watch, things have been different. The deficit's come down both years that I've been in office. And I just signed legislation that's going to reduce it even more in the decades to come. Now, Republicans in Congress are doubling down on their commitment to explode the deficit again. Just this week, it's hard to make this stuff up. Just this week, Republican leaders said if they get their way, they're going to extend the Trump tax cuts, which are due to expire in a couple of years. Extend them. They said they'll repeal the corporate minimum tax of just 15% that I just signed into law, 15%. They'd allow the largest and most prosperous corporations in America to go back to paying zero in federal income tax, which 55 of them did in 2020. They said they'll repeal the lower prescription drug cost, and it will take effect next year. These major reductions in the drug costs don't really kick in until next year. If Republicans repeal it, it's going to raise costs on to millions of seniors, and the cost to the federal government will be billions of dollars. Put it all together, the Republican plan would add about $3 trillion to the deficit. $3 trillion. That's their plan. That's what they did under my predecessor, and that's what they intend to do again. Adding another $3 trillion to the deficit is reckless, it's irresponsible, and it would make inflation worse. For Americans, the deficit could not be clearer. We don't have to take my word for it, what they're for. They've laid out a plan and they laid out very clearly. Congressional Republicans say, and you all know this, their number one priority is to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. Now here's what that means. If they get their way, the power we just gave Medicare to begin to negotiate lower prescription drugs goes away, gone. If they get their way, the $2,000 cap on prescription drug costs, which takes effect next year, maximum any senior would have to pay no matter what their drug costs are, would be $2,000, goes away, gone. The $35 a month cap on insulin, which takes effect next year, folks on Medicare, gone. The savings on health care premiums of $800 a year for millions of Americans under the Affordable Care Act, gone. And of course, they're still determined to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which means an end to the protections for tens of millions of people who cannot afford health insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Let's remember that. We're talking about millions of people will lose their health insurance because they do not have a way to get it because they have a pre-existing condition. That's gone as well. And they're doing everything they can to get gas prices. We're doing everything we can to keep gas prices down. The Republicans are against it all. And it's all part of the trickle-down mentality that says it doesn't matter what's happening on Main Street as long as Wall Street's feeling good.